All right, everybody, we got a pretty star-studded packed house tonight. Well, tonight for us, but coffee with the McCool's. We got first up. I wanted to say thanks to Chief Goldstrom for joining us, and then I'm going to turn it over to there you are, Chief Katie McCool and Chief Retired Chris McCool. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you guys don't know, both the McCools grew up in recruiting, and obviously both made chief, which is big props to you guys. Yep. I love it. All right. Both of them, obviously have been superintendents, and Chief McCool is now on her third. That's right. Third. I can't believe that. Third command chief position. Wow. That is amazing stuff. And we're really excited and ready to hear what you guys have to say. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and you guys can go ahead and start on.
Awesome. Well, first, let me just say thank you for this opportunity and for being flexible with my schedule. Obviously, it's probably early evening for you all. It is morning for us. Got up this morning, got a good workout in, and got here, and we have till 8:50 because I have another meeting with the JASDAF, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, so I don't want to be late for that one. But we are just looking forward to your questions and what's on your all's mind and what we can answer for you. I'll just say up front, things are very busy over here in the Indo-Pacific. We are working every single day to maintain our readiness to be prepared for the threats that we have in our AOR while still battling with COVID. And it is very different being here than it was being in the States. And if you guys want some more information on that, I can give it to you. But our airmen are under a tremendous amount of pressure and with not a lot of relief valves from the COVID situation as it is here. But we are still doing great things. Got to see a recruiter last week. Master Sergeant Reyes and I went and saw the local recruiter, and it was great seeing all the changes. And with that, I'll turn it over to the other Chief McCool.
Yeah, so again, appreciate the opportunity. Master Sergeant Carpenter, appreciate the invite. Chief Goldstrom, glad to see that you're on there as well, supporting the recruiters out there. And I think this is a great thing when AFRS Top 3 started these a while back. I thought it was spot on. Opportunity to get different perspective, but more importantly, to get to hear what's on the recruiters' minds. It's been about a year and a half since I retired, and I miss the family. I miss the Air Force family, the Air Force recruiting family. Obviously still being here with Katie and on Air Force bases, I still get to do Air Force type things. But I see a lot of names on there that I've had the fortunate opportunity to spend time with and learn from you guys. It's great to see that see some of you guys actually making your way up through the ranks and going to take control of your particular responsibilities and take care of airmen. So it's really good to see the names out there that I see.
All right, so we have a couple talking points here, but if you all have questions, I'd like to start with that. And then if you don't have questions, we'll go to the talking points. But we are more than willing to answer your questions. And like I tell all my airmen here, if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you that. If I can't tell you the answer, I'll tell you that. And if it's just my opinion, I'll state that as well. And so from there, I think I can see the chat, and I can also hear you if y'all unmute. You can ask or put them in chat, whatever works for you.
Hi, Chief. I'll ask the first question.
Corey, what's up?
It's great to see both of you.
Great to see you too.
My question is from going from recruiting service and then back into the operational Air Force. What was your views of, because right now we're trying to build the relationships with different commands and squadrons and bringing them into them understanding the recruiting and the background of recruiting. What was your thought process, or what did you view of the knowledge that the operational Air Force had on recruiting service as you went back?
Yeah, so I think both of us can speak to that. I've been out of recruiting service almost 9 years now, and Chris had an opportunity for his last assignment to work in AFSOC. So I think we can both speak to that. I think it's two parts. The first part I learned is that the force is very uneducated about what it is that recruiters do, and in some cases, the value that they bring to our Air Force. And, you know, there were many conversations in the beginning where I would be in the room and the comment would be made, oh, you were a recruiter, so you lied for a living. And that didn't go well with me. That never went well. And it didn't matter what rank the person was. It was always that, wait, let's go back to that comment and let's talk about what our recruiters actually do on a daily basis that enable our missions. So that's part one, is just having that conversation. And I think once you start talking to our senior leaders about what it is that recruiting service does, their eyes are, you know, their eyes get big because they just don't realize all that goes into actually recruiting our force. And then I'll say the second piece is, and I can't speak to today, like I said, I've been out for 9 years, but I also saw that there's a knowledge gap with our recruiters as to what's happening in the operational Air Force. And so there are things sometimes said to applicants with zero malintent. It's just a lack of knowledge about how things have changed in the operational Air Force. So I think there needs to be a great partnership between recruiting service and the rest of the Air Force. I won't even say operational because I think we're all operational. We all have an operation, we all have a mission. But I think it's important that we continue to strengthen that relationship so that our recruiters have a very solid understanding, especially those that have been in the business a very long time, of what's changed and what's actually happening. And then the rest of the force needs to be educated on what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too much more in depth than that, but you know, I think Katie hit the nail on the head. You know, I was thinking recruiting service understanding, deliberately making effort to step out of recruiting service. So recruiters, senior leaders, to go to their host base, to link up with other organizations and find out really how good are we doing as a recruiting service. And you get to see it firsthand. When I went into AFSOC for the last year, I got a lot of what Katie said, you know, in the room of colonels and chiefs. Oh, you were 8R, you were a professional salesman, you were a professional liar, and so on and so forth. So I spent a lot of time trying to educate the room, if you will, on really what is going on and the challenges that recruiters face. But more importantly, as I was trying to link up recruiting service and AFSOC for the Special Mission Aviator, Career Enlisted Aviator dilemma, I would say that the AFSOC flying training units, formal training units were experiencing. The more I talked with folks in recruiting service, I realized how disconnected we were with what the actual need of our customer was. Specifically in the career enlisted aviator world. So, you know, you take a person and things may have changed. I know we were trying to work some things, but I'll just give the example to put things in perspective. We'll take an applicant that just simply qualifies we're going to take them and put them in Air Force Special Operations as an aviator and have them go kill people. What we were seeing was there was a significant disconnect. Do we still have you guys? Do we still have y'all?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. You know, there just was a disconnect. So, you know, to piggyback on Katie's second statement of recruiting service and recruiters getting out and educating themselves on what is happening outside of recruiting service, I think is significant. And there's easy ways to do it. I think, you know, we do base tours for delayed entry program members all the time, but do we ever set up base tours for just ourselves as recruiters to go to a flying unit, to go to the Force Support Squadron, to go to a Security Forces Squadron, and just kind of get an immersion on what's happening and get some direct feedback on how we're doing. Be prepared for the feedback. So that's going to be key because they already have this impression of how we operate. All right. So I think that's important. What else you got? Any feedback or comments on that?
Hey, Chiefs, Tony Goldston here. I would like to add just one thing. We've been working very, very hard, and Chief McCool, we've been kind of holding you up as an example, really, both of y'all, because what we're trying to do, and we're actively working towards, is setting the conditions for our recruiters to be in recruiting, leave, do something else back in the functional Air Force, operational Air Force, whatever term you want to use,
Sure.
and then come back. And we've actually got some success stories out there right now. We're bringing back a couple of chiefs that were former recruiters not too long ago, and they're coming back, and it's fantastic. For our formation, and some of them have heard me talk about this, it's good for us to understand the national defense strategy and the interim national security strategy that's just been released by President Biden. Because of that, we understand the why, right? And my last point on that, in my interactions with a lot of our recruiters, we talk about how recruiting is a sales business. And while that's true to a certain extent, I think we sell ourselves short when we say that, because we're actually a talent acquisition and readiness organization. And when you look at it from a readiness standpoint, it naturally goes right into the NDS. Thank you for allowing me to make a comment on that one.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And that's important for our recruiters to stay connected with that piece. What else y'all got? If not, we'll go to one of these.
So we got a Seahawks fan out there, maybe one or two. What's up, Rebecca? Bill Spring, I don't know what you're supporting nowadays, but it's not the Cowboys, it's not good. Hey, go ahead.
So we'll go, there was one of the comments on here about life balance and both having been chiefs, now one still a chief, but a retired chief, and the dynamics of our family. And I'll tell you, it has not always been easy. And, we had 1 year of separation when Chris made chief and went out to Montgomery to be the superintendent. And that was a hard year for us. And we said we would never do it again. And we find ourselves now back in that same situation where we're going to separate our family for a period of time. And that's mostly because, being out here, just things are so much different. So the sports programs are still non-existent out here. And we were hopeful that it would be back up and running by the fall, but it just doesn't look like that's going to happen. So Chris and Gage are going to return to the States so that he can do his senior year and play football and have some of those normal life opportunities that just aren't necessarily here right now. But I will say that it has been the greatest opportunity of my life to have a partner that completely understands what I'm going through and the business of recruiting when we were both doing it at the same time. And now is my sounding board, because at this stage, it can be lonely. You don't have a lot of people that you are going to bounce ideas off of before you sit in front of, my boss is a lieutenant general. Before I sit down with him, I want to make sure that I've thought through every possible scenario that I'm going to present him and the questions that he might ask. And so it's great to have a partner that gets that and that is so important.
Yeah, I think the other piece too with mill to mill is also recognizing that your family is along for the ride. And as you have to work through those challenges, and I know Corey, you're kind of in the same boat now. It is really, you have to deliberately plan out what your family goals are, what your career goals are individually. And then you may have to get to a point where like Katie and I did, we recognized that at a very early stage that her career path was going a different direction than mine. So to acknowledge that and represent that was the best decision for the Air Force was to help to support that. Katie's opportunities were presented at different times. She capitalized on them. She worked her ass off and made the most of it. So to make a decision as a military family and acknowledge that can happen, I think is important. But then to also recognize the impact that those decisions can have on the family, on the kids, and be willing to communicate with each other. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be difficult because you're obviously not always going to agree either on the subject matter, the outcome, or the goal. You have different goals, so it is challenging to put the two together. But it can be done if you work at it. You know, one person, I heard somebody tell me a long time ago that if you ever have to work at marriage, then maybe you shouldn't be married. And I completely disagree. I think relationships are work, friendships are work. So it just goes hand in hand.
You know, and to touch on, or to kind of circle back, when we talk about how, you know, the hectic work schedule that we have, I try extremely hard that when I'm at work, my focus is on work. And I try to capitalize in my day as much as I can and not waste time throughout the day so that I can accomplish what I need to accomplish. But the minute I walk in the door at home, you know, we're on a Marvel, is that what it is? The Marvel movie?
Yeah, we're watching Marvel movies.
Gage wanted to do a Marvel marathon. So almost every day when we get home, you know, it's change clothes, sit down, eat dinner, and watch a movie together. And then we're all in bed by about 8 these days because we get up at 4 a.m. to make sure that we can get our workouts in and get some other stuff done. But I think you just really have to, and it's hard to do in recruiting. So let me say, I recognize that in recruiting, there was no difference between our work life and our family life. They were the same all the time. And that is an added stress in some ways, but it's a benefit in some ways because you have a little more flexibility, but you're always on. And we still talk about, you know, both being flight chiefs at the same time. And Tuesday mornings, if that phone rang, praying to God it was his phone and not my phone, or vice versa.
Yeah. And you know, recruiters are crazy out there. For everybody that's been a flight chief and above, you know, they'll just call you at 6 a.m. just to mess with you. Yeah, those days were challenging, but you know, as a recruiting family, you know, to get the kids involved, to get your spouse involved is extremely important. And I've seen really successful recruiters and recruiter couples out there that was part of their success, was that as much as they can or could, they included their families. Their kids were at events, at air shows. They were right there working with them, enjoying the benefits of being a recruiter. And I think that's important. There are also those out there that just don't. Some families don't support their recruiter like that, and that makes it very challenging. And I think that's where, for all the leaders out there, that you recognize those things early and often. If you see a recruiter struggling, if you're at events that families can be at and their family's not there, you might want to look a little further into that and see how we can, you know, let the family know that we appreciate them, that we want them at those events, because it would just make it easier for the recruiter.
That true story, in LA, we had gone to IKEA and we had lost track of Gage for a minute. So we're walking around looking for him, and we see the back of him, and he's sitting at a desk with a play phone. And he says, "Hello, Cacooter, this is the commander." And he starts talking about making goal. And we were just like, I mean, he was probably what, 5 years old?
Yeah, it's like 5. Yeah.
And just that he had picked up so much on what it is that we're doing. And now he's about to be 17 years old. So it's great. And this has been his whole life. Military has been his whole life.
Yeah. It's been fun though. It's been more fun than not. That's for sure.
So I will say, please, if you have questions, and you can either just say you got one in the message or just speak up. Otherwise, you know, like I said, we've got a few more talking points here that we're more than willing to speak to.
So, on the topic of you know, getting families involved in work-life balance and stuff, I really agree with you guys about getting family involved in recruiting events and stuff like that. But I also have a family member that's like, no, I don't want to be like, get me away from that stuff, right? And it's always kind of a struggle, and it does make it hard to get, you know, like, okay, now I have to choose that I have to be away from my family for, you know, whatever that period of time, whether it's an air show on a Saturday or whatever, you know, instead of, you know, having them there. And then, you know, at moments you can, you know, chit chat with your other family members and whatever, you know, you're not always busy. But like with like key spouse programs and stuff like that, you guys, you know, have obviously been through the pro soup and superintendent roles, and you know, ma'am, I'm not sure, you know, what the status of those type programs are over on your base now, but you know, how do you get people that are necessarily not involved, you don't have, per se control over them. I mean, it's just really like encouragement. I don't know what else to really do.
All right, so I'm gonna be vulnerable for a second. So I went through with my practice wife a pretty life-changing statement from her as we were separating, and it was towards the end of my first tour. So I had been a training instructor, a military training instructor, and then an enlisted accessions recruiter. And this was at the end of my EA tour. We were separating, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And she said, "Do you know what I would give to have just one of those plaques that you have in boxes in the back of the yard in the storage room at your mom's house?" And so that resonated with me, and it really spoke to me. I think we rely on programs and leadership things like key spouse programs, those types of things, to really draw in the family. But I cannot emphasize how important it is for you as the member to recognize your family, that individual personally. Find out what's important to them and treat them like a king or queen. Give them their day in the sun. Give them their day on stage, their day in the spotlight. And if it means you go to the trophy store, that you spend dollars on end to buy things for your DEPers, maybe you go buy a trophy for your spouse. Maybe you go get a plaque for your spouse, or you thank them specifically for their support of recruiting service and the things that you're doing in your career. I think that is the start. It starts with you. It starts with the individual. Don't force the issue, but sometimes all it takes is that initial hug or that gesture from you to say, "I really appreciate what you do, and I couldn't do the air shows and the school visits and all these things in our Air Force career, and I couldn't be a successful recruiter if it wasn't for you." And so I think that's the first step. The programs then will come later, because if they're already not wanting to be there even with you as an individual, which my practice wife didn't want to be. She wanted nothing to do with extra functions outside of my normal workday. After being an MTI and all the hours that required, and then the variations in hours as a recruiter, it did take time away from the family at times. And other times it didn't. When I mastered my time, I feel like I was spending more time with the family, but the damage was done already. She was already jaded. So the only way that I think I could have even broke through that a little bit was to recognize her personally. And I never got there. And so I share that as often as I can with recruiters or other special duty folks, just airmen in general, is that you have to thank your family, find out what's important to them, and thank them personally, not just expecting them to enjoy the ride and stay with you. Hope that helps.
Absolutely. I think that was like really spot on. That was great advice.
No, and I see that note about, handwritten notes to spouses on the team. I think that is a huge part of what we do. And I know walking in here to even this position at the 5th Air Force, there's a lot of things that are kind of different because of COVID. So I'm not spending as much time with our JASDAF partners right now because of the state of emergency in government of Japan. So I've taken that time to see where some of our issues were within the headquarters, and our key spouse program was struggling because they've not had any opportunity to come in and meet the spouses or to have the type of things that we had done in the past. And so for me, just sending an email to all of the 5th Air Force headquarters and introducing our key spouse virtually, providing her information and telling people how she was a force multiplier for our team. I think those things, you are the connective tissue as a flight chief, as a supervisor of airmen. Sometimes you have to be the one to dig into things that are, key spouse program is not my lane officially, but as a chief and as a leader of people, that is absolutely my lane, to make sure that we're connecting all those pieces.
Yeah. I believe key spouse involvement, or spouse involvement and family involvement, starts in the house. You've got to motivate them and inspire them to want to be a part of it. And it could be the most simple thing, that gesture that you do that changes the course of that behavior.
So kind of switching gears here, the other thing, it talked about leadership principles that they use. I think the more I go, the more I realize how much I don't know. And so I like to say I probably don't know a lot of things, but I know the people who do know a lot of things. And so I found that my connection power has been the greatest advantage that I've had. And it's interesting, what recruiting has given me specifically. So when I got hired into this position, there's some challenges with how the Japanese Air Self-Defense Forces, how they recruit. And my boss asked me to, look at some of those things and see what I could do to help them. But it got deeper when we started talking about F-35 maintainers and how do we assist them in their maintenance program. And everything that I kept being asked to do somehow tied back to connections that I had in recruiting. And I think recruiting really gives you the ability to communicate well. And that's something that, whatever you decide to do the rest of your career, whether it's stay in recruiting, go do something else, retire, the skill sets that recruiting has given you are some of the best skill sets that you could ever have. The ability to communicate, the ability to ask questions and pull at strings and get to the deeper root of what's actually happening in situations. And I think the second thing that Chris talked about is vulnerability. When I talk to my boss, I ask him, how are you doing, sir? I mean, there's a lot of pressure that comes along with being a 3-star in this area, and telling him the challenges that I have, and talking to our airmen about failures that I've had in my career or hard times that I've had, and being willing to have those conversations and tell people I'm not perfect. And he would second that. I'm not perfect. But I did an event with women recently, and one of them asked me how I keep from burning out. And I was like, I don't keep from burning out. I burn out. You just don't see it, because I go home and I have my little burnout session, and then I get it off my chest, and I remember why I'm here, and I go back the next day and it's all good again. So I think it's important to have that vulnerability, not to act like, or number one, not to act like you're the best. And number two, not to start believing you're the best, because anytime you think you have it all figured out and you've got the answers, that's probably where you need to go. You need to take a step back, because that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. Man, you're good. Katie talked about the communication aspect, and I think that's extremely important. I think mastering your craft as a communicator is important. So we teach, through recruiting service, certain models, ways to communicate with our applicants. But to be able to take that a step further and learn, study and understand emotional intelligence, what makes people tick? Why is this person different than this person? Why can I get a different result with the same objective from this person than this person? So, as leaders, it's extremely important. And Chief Goldstrom had mentioned it earlier, talent management, that for you guys as leaders to figure out what your team members bring to the fight. There's been many experiences that I had once I moved into leadership roles, where the team is what made the mission happen, not me. Actually, every example is the team made the mission happen, but it was very critical to figure out where each team member fit, and then let them run, let them do what they do best, and that's where the talent management comes into perspective. So recruiting service gives you the opportunity to work with a lot of different people, a lot of different experiences and behavior patterns. So you get more, you get kind of rapid fire education on human resources, on how to manage and work through problems with people. That is an extremely valuable characteristic and asset to have outside of recruiting service. And Chief Goldstrom, I'm so thankful that you said what you did, because we have to take these leadership skills that recruiters are learning, put that out there in the Air Force outside of recruiting service, so that people do see how valuable our recruiters are. and the talent that they have in working with human people, with the human resource, and the understanding of emotional intelligence, how important that is to an organization at the higher level. You know, when you're a squadron superintendent or a group superintendent, you don't necessarily have to be the tactical level expert anymore. You're not turning wrenches, or you shouldn't be. You're not turning wrenches, you are managing people. And recruiters are the best at it. So let's get them out there and let's show the Air Force what recruiters can do. Recruiters, the way that you help yourself is you master your craft outside of impact. If you're really good at impact and that's all you're good at, you've got more work to do.
And I'll say along those lines too, one of the things that I think War College gave me more than anything else was the realization that this is an open book test. And I mean, my planning guide, yes, it's paper because a lot of things I do now are TS, and I want to have the ability to still have, what are you laughing at?
Your paper planning
but
guide.
I know, but if you look in here, I mean, the things that I carry every single day, Chief Staff of the Air Force action orders, the DoD playbook, the National Security Strategy, National Defense Strategy, little joggers on China and Russia, things that are going to come up in even things that you don't think relate to this. There have been conversations where everyone's talking about something and I'll just flip to a page and I'll say, well, General Brown said this. And then everybody in the room just stops because sometimes we lose focus of the most basic things that are right in front of us that we have the ability to reach for every day. And then I'll say, I'm a book nerd. So even right by my, this is not on purpose, but even right by the desk are some books that I've been using recently. And there's just so much knowledge that you can gain by reading that you can't, there's no way I can possibly have all the experiences that I need to be successful, but I can learn from others. So this is a good one. What got you here won't get you there. And this is a great book that I'm getting ready to do a chief orientation course for all our chiefs in 5th Air Force. And that's the book that they're going to get. But I think it's important that you read. And for a long time, I only read leadership books. Yeah. And then I opened my aperture and I got stuck on World War II. So I've got about 20 books over here on World War II, which ironically coming into this job was a huge benefit. So reading history, reading biographies, Call Sign Chaos by General Mattis, one of my favorite books that I have read in the last few years. And so just open your mind and continue to educate yourself. We'll stop there for a second and see if there's questions.
I have a real quick question. Can all y'all see Master Sergeant Roy? Yeah, it's like you have a green screen backdrop. It's like you look like you're driving in a car, but you're at some Florida sunset, or I don't know what you're doing.
Hey, what's going on, Chief McCool? You know I'm in Miami now.
But you look like you're driving, but your car ain't moving.
I'm not driving.
He seatbelted in at work.
Oh, I got you. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you. A lot of folks out there work, man, everybody. A lot of 331 folks out there, some schoolhouse folks. Man, everybody looking good.
It's like a reunion.
See, I don't see any questions in the chat. Anybody got anything?
I got a question. So you guys were talking about emotional intelligence and stuff. Have you guys like taken any courses from colleges and that sort of stuff on those types of subjects?
I'll say we touched on it in War College. It was one of the things that we looked at. And in my first master's degree in management, there were some classes on emotional intelligence. But my reading has been the most beneficial in rounding out that education on what that means to be emotionally intelligent. And I cannot underscore enough how important that is as you continue to move forward, is to be able to understand a room, to be able to read people in the room, to understand when you're crossing a line or when you're hurting I mean, there's just so many aspects to emotional intelligence that are necessary to be successful.
Yeah, I think it's also important to understand what your own emotional intelligence is. You know, what are your triggers? What are things that, like Katie said, if you're sitting in a room and you know that you're someone that's very passionate about certain topics or the things that you believe in, are you the person that is smart enough to know when to hold your tongue, think through your response, or are you the one that is not in control of your own emotion and just spat off the first thing that comes to mind? And as you guys are advisors to your commanders, as you guys are mentors to field grade officers and CGOs, it's really, you're being watched. It's very important that you have control of your own emotional intelligence. As far as the courses are concerned, throughout a lot of the HR, human resources management college classes, there's a lot of business talk. There's a lot of discussions about, when to hire, who to hire. If you're dealing with a certain situation in the work center, how do you react to that? So other than Air Force emotional intelligence, specific Air Force things, just tied into an HR program, there's a lot of stuff out there. What about you, Sergeant Carpenter? It sounds like you might have some experience there.
Well, not really. Just more like things that I'm looking to, I guess, expand upon. I mean, I used to listen to a lot of books as I was driving around South Dakota and Montana, whatever, right? Because that's when I had time to do that. But just kind of like emotional intelligence seems to always come up when you're talking to execs, whether it's Air Force execs or civilian execs. That's something that seems to be very, very valued. And I was just kind of more curious if there was any courses that you guys had taken or any books that you would recommend on that sort of stuff.
I will also say one of the great things about being a chief is that you get to go to some different courses that are a lot more in depth. And in one of the ones I went to last year, I got assigned a life coach, and 4 sessions with a life coach was fascinating to, number one, get 360 feedback. So you see, what your subordinates, your peers, and your supervisors think of you. And then to be able to go through with another person who knows nothing about you, who is separated from the military, and to be able to talk about your trigger points or the things that you are good at or the things you struggle with. And so there's been a couple of things that have been very important to me. And one is something I used to make fun of, but now I do on a daily basis, and that's meditation. Is that, at some point I realized that the most important value I have in my life is calm and peace. And I can't have that if I'm always spun up. And so just taking 5 minutes in the morning to quiet my mind, to be completely still. One thing I learned is that when I feel my blood pressure go up, because I'm a passionate person, I can feel, when there's issues that affect our airmen or affect the mission, I can control that just by the way I breathe, just by relaxing my own muscles, how important that is. And then the second one is setting boundaries, is that other people are going to come to you with their hair on fire about issues. And I had to learn to set boundaries, that just because your hair is on fire and just because you are stressed out doesn't mean you need to give that to me. So when people are coming to me with issues, I am pretty straightforward about, I just need the facts. I need you to tell me what's going on. And then I need a minute to think, because if I react to what they're feeling, I might miss the mark. And so if I set a boundary of, I need the facts, I need to know your impression of it, but now I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to think for a minute. A lot of times I'll go, woo, if I had said what I wanted to say, going right into that situation, I would have totally missed the mark. But by taking a minute to step back or to think or to get advice, I got it better than I would have.
Yeah, I just Google it. Get on Google and type in emotional intelligence, or go to audible.com or Apple Books or Faceplace or whatever it is, and then just type in your subject and you'll just pick stuff that you think is interesting to you. That's a start. Taking recommendations from other folks. Crucial Conversations was one that got me started on diving deeper into really trying to solve problems between people. And then also trying to get, to advance an idea that was extremely valuable or important to me while incorporating a support team around you. Because obviously if the team's not on board, you're not going to get there. So how do you get to a point when stakes are high and you're dealing with several different people in the room? How can you have a conversation to advance your goals or your ideas without ending up in confrontation?
And that goes back to a great point, and why I like the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, is that a lot of people, you do all these personality traits, about yourself. We get that from the Air Force. And at some point we just start saying, well, that's just who I am. Hey, I'm not a blue, so that's just who I am, deal with it. When in reality, you have to find out what you're not good at, be honest about it, and then work at it. Because just because you got to this point doesn't mean that you can't change and become better. You always have the opportunity to change direction, to change. And some of us, or you, me, all of us, it may be small tweaks. And in some areas it might be, man, we need a major overhaul. But you have to be willing to know where your weaknesses are and then work through those.
It looks like we have about 10 minutes before Katie has to jump out to another meeting.
I think somebody's asking.
If you guys see in the comments, there's some great recommendations on that subject. So thank everybody for sharing your experiences. What do y'all have out there?
Hey Chiefs, this is Sergeant Woods and AAA, and say hi, Sissy.
Hello.
There she is.
Just a plug, but Sunday is World Down Syndrome Day, and we celebrate hard over here. But we definitely have some brand new senior master sergeant selects on the call today. So what advice would you give them as they step into this new rank? And then what advice would you give to those that are recertified master sergeants? Awesome. For those of us that, next year.
Well, so first of all, to all the selects, and I don't want to say your names because I don't know if I would miss someone out there, but
Or tell someone that doesn't know yet.
yeah. Well, today's official,
okay,
they should know by now.
I don't get those emails anymore.
But I will just say there were some names that brought tears to my eyes. So it's always great to see people rewarded for success.
Yes.
But let me also say that not being promoted does not mean that you're not being rewarded for success. So victory, to me, is not about the achievement. It's about the work that you put in. And sometimes you work extremely hard, you do everything right, and it just doesn't turn out the way you wanted to in the moment. But that doesn't mean what you're doing doesn't have value. It doesn't mean that you should stop. And I'll give you an example off that line. I think sometimes, fitness, we set a weight loss goal or a lifting goal, or whatever it is, and we get frustrated when we don't meet it, and we just say, well, might as well give up. When you should actually be measuring the fact that you are at it every single day, that you're in the fight and you're continuing to do the right things. And that's the same thing in the Air Force. So if you were recertified as a master sergeant, we need damn good master sergeants. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing the best that you can for the Air Force, and know that you're important to the Air Force, and also that it was an extremely small percentage rate this year. So, just keep doing what you're doing. For the senior master sergeants, I think a lot of what we said is still true, is that it is going to be a change. The Air Force is going to ask more of you. A chief the other day, a retired chief, was giving some information, and he said he didn't like the word ready now. You're prepared. And I would agree with that. Ready means you're done. Prepared means it's time to move into the next level. And every single one of you that got selected for promotion are prepared to put on that stripe. And you will learn hard lessons, you will make mistakes, but you are prepared to move forward.
Yeah, spot on. Spot on. I'll summarize with, I've shared before with folks that worked with me, is you'll be the best pro suit, the best flight chief, the best senior master sergeant, the best master sergeant, the day that ends. When you are no longer a flight chief, you're the best flight chief you ever could have been. When you promote to senior master sergeant, you will be the best senior master sergeant you ever could have been when that ends. Whether that's the next promotion, that's retirement. So just keep working hard at it. You're ready. If you were promoted, you're ready. If you weren't promoted, it doesn't mean you're not ready. It just wasn't your time. So keep doing the things that you're doing and work hard, because the Air Force needs all of you guys. I see a lot of master sergeants and above out there. So you guys are in it you're in it to win it. You are Air Force through and through. So just stick with it. We can get into a whole bunch of other small minor details of what you might face and all of these things, but you're all going to face different challenges. So just know what's important to you and keep fighting.
I think Sergeant Cohen has a question.
Okay.
All right. So, Chiefs, good to see you both.
What's up, man? Good to see you again.
Hey, Chief McCool, I know you mentioned a couple of times your experience at Air War College. Just wanted to see real quick how impactful that was to your career, and also what are your thoughts on expanding opportunities like that to our enlisted force?
It was absolutely one of the best experiences I could have ever gotten, that I never knew I even wanted, because obviously that's not something that you ever even think is a possibility in your career. For me, having spent 14 years of my career in special duty, it was eye-opening, and it was hard. I'm gonna say that. It was an extremely hard curriculum, but I learned that all the chiefs that went through that program, I think 11 in total over 2 years, we all succeeded. We all graduated from that program. And what it tells me is that we need to push our enlisted harder to have a better understanding of history, how that plays into national or to strategy, how it matters to our military, understanding other countries and the dynamics that they play into our national security. So, sorry, I just sort of, oh, that's what that was. It was absolutely an amazing opportunity. With that being said, I think we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we're developing educational opportunities for our enlisted that gives them the type of information that they need to be able to communicate with their boss at a different level. So in no way am I trying to be General Schneider, not even a little bit, but having an understanding of the way he thinks, having an understanding of the education that he received helps me understand what it is that he's looking at, where he's wanting to go, and then be able to translate that to our enlisted force at the very lowest level so that they have an understanding of why it matters what they do here in the Indo-Pacific. And that's what is important to me right now, is that our airmen know that what they do every single day is part of a much bigger picture. And if you're not aware, right now, today on our flight line, we have the Secretary of Defense plane and the Secretary of State plane. So both of them are here because it's important enough to our new presidential administration to continue to build those relationships with the government of Japan. And so I believe it is extremely important, not just for us, but for our enlisted as well. So we have about 3 minutes left. So if we just want to give a couple of closing comments. I'll say again, Chief Goldstrom, thank you for being on the call. Thank you, Sergeant Carpenter, for asking us to do this. Obviously, it's something that we really care about. Recruiting service is something that will always be extremely important to us. And I, as long as I'm still wearing this uniform and even beyond, will be an advocate for you and for what you do. And just know that there are people outside of recruiting service that still are very much focused on you all and what it is that you bring to the fight. And I'm always available. I'm not always available immediately, but I'm always available. So if you need me or you need Chris, you can reach out to us and you can get a hold of us, and I will respond. And if you need Chris, I can get you his email address too. And I know he will. Here, I'll type it in, and I know he'll be available too. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to see. I wish I could just have a conversation with every single one of you out there, because I miss you guys. But it's great to sit back and watch you guys doing great things. I know it's challenging. you know, I'll leave you with one parting experience I had in Montgomery. Sitting in a room, it's about perspective and where's your focus. Sitting in a room with some new recruiters, I was a new squadron superintendent, and you begin discussing challenges. And a recruiter brought up, well, my ASVAB pass rate in my zone is only 10%. And so we start walking that back. Well, 10%, that sounds horrible. My God, wow. But that's what he was focused on. 10%, that is a horrible ASVAB pass rate. That means 10 out of 100 pass the test. Now, well, that doesn't do much for, obviously qualified applicants in our AOR. Bottom line is, when you walk it back, we say he had 3,000 kids in his zone. 10% of 3,000 is 300. What's your annual goal? 24. So can you find 24 kids out of the 300 that did pass? And that kind of changed the whole dynamic of the conversation in the room, and then for that individual and others from that point on. So, where's your focus? And I think sometimes we allow ourselves in recruiting service to focus more on the challenges than the successes that we have and our ability to overcome the challenges, because you have the skill. Do you have the desire? Do you have the focus on the right things? And so I'm really excited to see what you do. If I can help out in any way, my personal email is correct in there. Just had to
I'm glad.
trust but verify. And then several of you guys, you can find me on Facebook. I don't get on Facebook a lot for specific reasons. Katie does all our family posts, but I am there. So if you have something that you want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to share time with you.
I do want to circle back. I did want to make one other comment about War College. It's just one experience in my career. Every single one of you has an experience that's unique. Every one of you has an education in your background that you can bring. Use whatever you've been given by the Air Force. Use what it is that you have to better where you're at, because we're not all going to have the same experiences. And if you look at the bios of every 4-star and every Chief Master Sergeant, not a single one of them is the same. And there's a reason for that, because we're all educated differently at different times for different reasons. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm going to get this promotion list from Katie or from somebody. And,
I will give it to you.
because I'm really excited to reach out to you guys and promote, and then catch up with a lot of you guys that I haven't seen in a while. Appreciate you.
Awesome. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
We enjoyed it.
Thanks, Sergeant Carpenter. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chief Goldstrom, for joining us as well. And that's going to be the end of it for us. So we'll talk to you guys the first Wednesday of April. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Congrats, Carp.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.